Hello and welcome to the White House 1600 Sessions. I'm Stuart McLaurin, President of the White House Historical Association. John H. Dalton served as the 70th Secretary of the Navy, a position he was named to by President Bill Clinton. For 5.5 years, he led with distinction at a time filled with many challenges. In his new memoir called At the Helm, My Journey with Family, Faith, and Friends to Calm the Storms of Life, John recounts his remarkable journey from very modest beginnings in Shreveport, Louisiana, to the U.S. Naval Academy, to a well-respected career in both public service and business. Twice during his career, he answered the call of his commander-in-chief to serve in important roles, first by fellow Navy man President Jimmy Carter, who nominated John in 1977 to be president of the Government National Mortgage Association, and 2 years later asked him to serve as a member and later chairman of the Federal Home Loan Bank Board. John was then asked by President Clinton to lead the United States Navy and the Marine Corps. We're proud to have John as an emeritus member of the White House Historical Association's Board of Directors. And we're even more proud to call John and his wonderful wife, Margaret, personal friends of mine and so many of our board members and supporters. So, Mr. Secretary, tell us about this book and when you decided to write it and what inspired you.
Well, I never decided to write a book, and I'd be telling some story, and the other person would say, you all really need to write a book. And I dismissed it for the first several. More and more people started saying that, and I thought, well, maybe I should write a book. And at my retirement party from the Housing Policy Council, I said, I'm thinking about writing a book, and I got a thunderous applause, and people yelled, please do it, yeah, do it. And so I wrote At the Helm, and I'm glad I did.
I'm glad you did too. It's a terrific story, and the thing that comes through to me is your commitment to and the importance of faith and family and the Navy and service. And I know your wonderful wife, Margaret, is always with you for everything we do. And tell me about your family and the growing up in Louisiana and the importance of that family to you and now the family that you have now.
Well, my parents were the salt of the earth, and I really admired them. And my dad had an 8th grade education, and my mother had a high school diploma, but they were convinced that their kids were going to go to college and get a degree. And so they taught me honesty, faith, and, integrity and discipline, and they really instilled a great values in my growing up, and I've been able to abide by those lessons all my life.
And you were public school educated as a young boy, and you're in Shreveport, Louisiana. How in the world did you set your sights on the United States Naval Academy?
Well, we had a speaker at our assembly in high school, and he said he wanted his son to go to the U.S. Naval Academy because he was convinced that that was the best overall education a young man could get. And I thought, aha, that's what I'll do. And I went home from school that day, and I said, I want to go to the U.S. Naval Academy. And my brother wrote a letter to our congressman asking for the application package, and the rest is history.
I want to point out you mentioned all of those life qualities that were important to you and instilled in you by your family, but I would add one to that, and that's perseverance, because you didn't get into the Naval Academy the first time around, and As an Alabama fan, I'm not going to mention those three letters where you spent a year. But then I love the story about how you got yourself in front of the congressman to get appointed.
Well, our next door neighbor worked at the drugstore where he had breakfast every day that the Congress was in recess. She would tell me when he was going to be there, and I went up to see him, and I said, I've had a great year at LSU. I went to LSU for a year when I didn't get into the Naval Academy and had a great year there. I was president of my pledge class and initiated into Phi Eta Sigma of the freshman academic scholarship. And I said to our congressman, if you give me your principal appointment, you won't regret it. And hopefully he in heaven agrees with me now.
Absolutely. Well, that persistence paid off, and the chutzpah of a 19-year-old to walk in and encounter a U.S. congressman is a great story. And you had wonderful years at the academy that really laid the foundation for the rest of your life and career. You never dreamed as a midshipman that you would one day be Secretary of the Navy. Suppose someone had said that to you when you were at the academy, what would you have said?
Well, you must be kidding. But, I've had a blessed life, and I'm grateful for it. I really am.
After your years in the academy and in the Navy and in business, there came a time when you started down the road of political public service, and your first encounter with the first president that you worked for, I believe you heard him speak somewhere.
It was at a Naval Academy chapter, we were living in Dallas, and he was coming to Dallas to speak to a
This was
convention.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter. And he was a Governor Carter then, and he had less than 1% name identification when he came to speak at our chapter meeting. And I sat next to him during lunch, and we got along well. We were both Southerners, both Naval Academy graduates, both submariners, and both worked for Admiral Rickover. And we hit it off, and I said, Governor, how are you going to break out of the pack? He said, I'm going to win Iowa. I'm going to use that momentum to win New Hampshire. And if I can beat George Wallace in Florida, the nomination will belong to me. And a Democrat's going to win in 1976 after the problems that Nixon had. And so I went home from work that day, and I said, I had lunch today with the next president of the United States, and he's going to win, and I'm going to help him. And I dove in with both feet.
So President Carter is elected president of the United States, and you have the privilege and the opportunity to work in his presidency. Tell me about the roles you held in the Carter presidency.
Well, I was privileged to be asked to be president of the Government National Mortgage Association, or Ginnie Mae. I really enjoyed that job, and I did it for a couple of years, and I had some advice from an appointee of the Ford administration that said, congratulations on being elected president of Ginnie Mae, being appointed president of Ginnie Mae. And he said, find something that is difficult for the president to do and help him on it. And then the Panama Canals Treaty came up, and it passed by one vote, and I helped him get two senators' votes. And when they formed the presidential campaign, I was asked to be the national treasurer, and I'm sure that was the result of what I did on the Panama Canal Treaty. But I enjoyed that job, and then I was also a member and chairman of the Federal Home Loan Bank Board which is an organization that doesn't exist anymore, but it was very important to the savings and loan industry then.
And that was your first time in public service other than being in the Navy.
Yeah.
Importance to you of public service?
Well, I think there's no higher calling than serving one's country, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve as a government official in the federal government, and I really enjoyed it.
Really inspirational, and I think at a time when young people are maybe evaluating, is that something that I want to do? And the government seems controversial today, but we need good people.
Yeah, we do.
And not just in the presidential level, but at all ranks of government service.
Absolutely.
So Jimmy Carter is still living, still with us, and an amazing force of life. You know, when his brain cancer was diagnosed many years ago, and we thought that was the end, and he's persevered and is still going today. He's the Energizer Bunny of former presidents.
Well, he really is. He's lived longer than any other president that has ever been elected, and he really personifies hope, and he is a wonderful man, and his great faith and his belief in family. And we just went to the dedication of a building in his honor at the Naval Academy, and he personified faith. He really did.
I know you visited with the Carters many times in Plains and post-presidency. When did you last visit with him, and any reflections on that visit?
Well, it was the 75th anniversary was the last time we were together, and we were honored to be asked to be there because there weren't that many people there, and you know, he's had an extraordinary life, and he had people from his governor's time and presidential time and Carter Center time, and we were just honored to be there.
Well, I know there's one thing that the two of you have in common. You named the submarine after Jimmy Carter. What was President Carter's response when you told him about the submarine?
Well, he said that other than marrying Rosalind and being elected President of the United States, that was the greatest honor he had ever achieved, and he was eternally grateful to me for naming that ship the USS Jimmy Carter.
And you've recently had a submarine named in your honor, and that's a rare happening for anyone, particularly for a submariner as yourself. And tell us of what that means to you.
It's the greatest honor of my life, and I'm very, very grateful. The Secretary of the Navy has the privilege of naming ships and naming the sponsors of ships. Carlos del Toro is the incumbent secretary, and he did me the greatest honor I've ever achieved, and I named Margaret to be the sponsor.
Oh, that's terrific. That's great. Well, congratulations on that. I think it's an extraordinarily deserved honor and will be a tremendous legacy, and all of those future sailors that will be aboard that ship will learn about you, and I'm sure they'll all read this extraordinary book and know all about your life. So, John, the Clinton presidency, and Bill Clinton asked you to be Secretary of the Navy. What must that have meant to you?
We were living in San Antonio, and Mayor Henry Cisneros was on the transition committee, and he called me and he said he knew that I'd been active in the campaign, and he wanted to talk to me about people that would be candidates to serve in government. And I went down and met with him, and I told him about some of the people that had been active in the campaign that would qualify to be candidates for government service, and he said, "What about you?" He also said there was a short list for the cabinet, and I told him that I wasn't interested in going back into government just to be going back into government. But if I could do something really meaningful, I would.
Sure.
Well, he told me that there was a short list for all the cabinet positions. Is there anything else that I would like to be? And I said, I'd like to be considered to be Secretary of the Navy. And he said, you'd be great at that, and I will be glad to recommend it to you. Give me your resume, and I will get it to the chairman of the Transition Committee. And he did, and I got the job.
Let's go to the book. And I love this cover of you at the wheel of the USS Constitution at the helm, and the subtitle, My Journey with Family, Faith, and Friends to Calm the Storms of Life. Tell me, John, a couple of examples about family and faith and those storms and how that assisted you in your life.
When I didn't get into the Naval Academy the first time, and then I had the difficulty of not getting in and going to LSU for a year, and the worst case of my life was when I lost the Savings and Loan Association in San Antonio. And that family, faith, and friends rallied behind me, and they were very important to me in getting through that tremendous difficulty that I had. Less than 5 years later, I was standing in front of Bancroft Hall, raising my right hand to become Secretary of the Navy, and that is a miracle. I mean, nearly having to declare bankruptcy and then becoming Secretary of the Navy is a true miracle.
And John, that is such a powerful testimony that I think so many people deal with challenges and failure, and they think that's the period on their life's journey. And your story demonstrates that it's not. It might be a comma.
My faith is very important to me, and my family is very important to me, and my friends are very important to me. And you're a friend, and I'm grateful for your friendship. And they all rallied behind me, and they are important to anyone's life. And I encourage you to nurture them, and they'll always be there for you when you need them.
Wow, that's so important. Well, you mentioned our work together and at the White House Historical Association, and you came to work on our board from having served on the Decatur House board, which is owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, but we have the privilege of using it as our base of operation. So you've seen both sides of that coin at Decatur House, and our work and mission is so important to both of us in historic preservation and taking care of that property, but also the White House is the principal focus of our work. And you were in the White House many times in the Carter presidency and in the Clinton presidency and others. What does that building mean to you, and what do you think and feel every time you go into that White House?
It's the American people's house, and the White House Historical Association makes that evident in their education program and many things. And the White House Historical Association does a great job, and I applaud them, and I'm grateful to be on the board.
Well, you've been a great leader and an inspiration to me. And another thing you talk about in the book that we've done together, and at your inspiration, we every January 5 celebrate the birthday of Stephen Decatur, who was a hero of the United States Navy, to this day still the youngest officer to achieve the rank of captain at age 25. And that's such a great occasion to talk about the connections between the United States Navy and the White House and the presidency. In fact, as instrumental as the Navy has been in our country, it wasn't until John Kennedy that we had a naval veteran as president.
Absolutely, and he was the first elected president as as a former naval officer, and Jackie Kennedy started the White House Historical Association, and I'm so glad that she did.
Well, John, I want to thank you for this inspirational story, for your example, your leadership, for all that you and Margaret mean to me as friends of mine and to the work of the association. And I think the examples that you give from your own story about faith, family, and friends, and I know that these are dynamics in my job at the White House Historical Association. When we have tough times or challenging circumstances, that it's those same three things that have been meaningful to me. And I just thank you for putting your voice onto the page of this book and sharing your life with us. And all the best to you and Margaret, and
Thank you.
Great success on the book.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I'm grateful to you.
Great. Thank you, John.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all for listening and watching today. I've had the great privilege to bring you stories like the one here today since the program began in 2017. You can listen to the dozens of interviews I've done over the years on your favorite podcast provider, or you can watch them on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. All of us here at the White House Historical Association, thank you for your support. When you become an association member, or when you purchase a book or an official White House Christmas ornament, you are helping to fund our education mission through teacher programming, publishing, and even this podcast. You can learn more about our work as a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization by going to our website, whitehousehistory.org. Thank you very much.